Hi friends. So this is a little Psoas release for my friend Sam, but for anybody who needs it. So there's varying degrees of intensity that you can do with this particular stretch. I'm going to choose kind of like the middle of the road. If you've never done it before, which we'll assume that you've never done it before, it can be kind of intense. And so I really suggest being really gentle with it. You may feel like not a lot is happening, and then when you come out of the stretch, you might be like, holy crap. So being really gentle, breathing, giving yourself lots of time and space to explore this. So you can use a yoga bolster or a pillow that's going to give you a little bit of leverage, so not a soft one. A blanket that's folded up, and then kind of the most intense is using an overball or a bumpy ball. Wait, kind of like the ones behind me. And I'm not going to demo it on those, but I'll explain how you can if you have a ball. But I want to just do a version that would be the most accessible, and most people aren't going to have the appropriate sized ball. So finding your prop of choice, bringing it onto the floor. I'm on an elevated surface for camera purposes, but I don't recommend being on an elevated surface. So being down on the floor with lots of space for your body. So you're going to bring your hip up onto the bolster, and then bringing your bottom leg forward, and then your top leg is going to reach back. I think you can see that. Okay, I'm wearing black, so it blends, right? So sometimes I joke that this looks like kind of like I'm running on my side. And the further your leg goes back, the more of a stretch you're going to get. And depending on how tight your quads are, you may feel it tug on your kneecap. If that is the case, you can always bring the knee back in a little, and then we can start to kind of like work it back as the stretch allows. So we're going to take a big breath in here and exhale. See if you can let that knee, the top leg, drop towards your floor. So the thigh bone is internally rotating, and you may feel a little stretch across the hip. You may feel a little stretch at the front of the hip. And if this neck angle doesn't work for you, grab a yoga brick or a little pillow. Either one is fine. We're going to start with that bottom arm straight out at like a 90-degree angle at that shoulder. And then the top arm is going to come and meet the palms. And take a big breath in. And then on that exhale, keep letting that thigh bone drop into internal rotation. So you'll be surprised. It's like as you start to organize other things, that leg is going to lift up a little bit and kind of start to pull tension. We really just want to see how weighted we can make it. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of downward pressure by adding that knee on top, and that increases the stretch a lot through here. And then breathing. Big breath in, big breath out. Notice if your breath is really coming forward in your body, like if it's a deep belly breath, or if you can find some space in your back to shift the breath. Your psoas attaches through your low back and then through the pelvic bowl, over the hip, and then it connects at your lesser trochanter on the back side of your femur. So it's a long line, and it starts all the way up here. And because it's attached to the back, if you let that posterior diaphragm really move, so breathing into your backside, breathing into your side ribs, you're going to get a better release for your psoas. Now taking a big breath in here, and a big breath out. And with every exhale, just seeing if you can get a little bit heavier. That thigh bone dropping in internal rotation. And then maybe starting to take the leg back a little bit. So my leg's relaxed enough now that I don't really have to push it down into internal. It's pretty heavy. And so I'm going to increase that stretch on my quad. Stretching your psoas and your quad simultaneously, research has shown that it gives you a better release. And breathing. Really, it's about the breath. If you're holding your breath at any point, back off the stretch until you can really find an easy, relaxed breath. And then that top arm is going to start to slide up and overhead. And I'm going to pause here. This is a pretty intense stretch for me on my right side. My right hip is my problem child. So I'm going to just take a minute and really breathe into that. And try to keep breathing into my back. And imagining I could breathe out my butt as if that were anatomically possible. It is possible to affect your pelvic floor with your breath. So really we're thinking about letting that pelvic floor drop and expand on the inhalation. And then on the exhale, it lifts up while diaphragm lifts up. It's so cool. Big breath in and big breath out. All right, so if you feel like you've gotten a good release at this point, you can continue to try to find a little bit more of that extension with that top leg, pushing it back a little bit further. Just don't take it to the place where it's really tugging on the knee. That doesn't feel so good. And inhaling into the ribs, exhaling, just trying to get weightier with every exhale. And as you continue your breath, depending on how much stretch you're feeling, you can start to take these ribs and open them up towards the ceiling. When we start to rotate ribs, what I see a lot of is that the ribs start to move up towards the ceiling. We still want to keep dropping them back towards the floor, even as we take it into the rotation. So if you notice that your chest starts to lift up towards the ceiling, back off the rotation until you can drop back to rotate versus lifting up. And as I start this rotation, you can see my knee has started to come up again. It's harder for me to maintain that internal rotation. This is pretty tight for me. And if I was going to be doing this for just me, I wouldn't rotate my ribs quite so much because I'm just not ready for it. It's just too tight. But if you're feeling it, you can go all the way out to the side. I'm going to bring it back. Big breath in, big breath out. I'm just going to add a little bit of an anchor there. Letting that inhale really expand all the way down and out my butt. And exhale. I'm going to release that foot. I'm going to start to bring myself out of the rotation just for time's sake. But while you do this on your own at home, hang out there as long as you want. However much time you got. Breathing, we don't do enough of the breathing into all the places. So it's a great opportunity to really do that. All right, so I'm going to bring my arms all the way around, and I'm going to start to fold that top thigh bone up to meet my other leg. With as little fuss as possible, minimal amount of movement, I'm going to move to a child's pose. So I'm going to take a big breath in. On that exhale, I'm going to think about lifting my guts back towards my spine to help support my spine. And then just really easy, rotate through into a child's pose. And the goal here is to really let those femurs drop down and back into the butt. So I don't care about your butt touching your heels. I care about the femurs being weighted back. So the more that you can keep wide sitting bones as opposed to tucking to try to get your butt down to your heels, think more about keeping that neutral spine and pushing the femurs back into the butt. No, because you can wait until our guests come tonight. Big breath in. My 5-year-old is asking me if he can have another lollipop. Big breath in and big breath out. So now we're just letting kind of psoas figure out where it is. It may have gotten some length. Letting the femur drop back into the butt. And one more big breath in. And back. And then you can bring yourself to hands and knees. Maybe just press back a couple of times. We're just giving some feedback to the body about where we are. And then I'm going to come up to set. I'm going to take a walk. Walk around the studio. So for me, I feel a lot of length on this side. I feel a little bit of that tug at the medial portion of my knee, that inside knee, which I think is okay. So that's why you just don't want to really like yank it down. You want to breathe it down. And then you can rinse and repeat on the other side. And then next week we'll make another psoas video for a little bit more of a working stretch. But this is a great relaxed way just to find a little bit more length. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section and I will address as we go. All right, enjoy.